Welcome, game chasers everywhere, to episode 25 of the Collecting Confidant with your host, GunstarHero. Yes, we reached the quarter centennial episode. It's going very well. Thank you to all the new subscribers and all the positive energy. And I'm looking forward to making even more great episodes in the future. But this week, I want to celebrate this milestone with a game I've been dying to cover for the last few weeks, and it took me a bit of time to finish it because it is quite challenging. This week we're going to be talking about the wonderful, sublime Death's Door, which was developed by Acid Nerve, famous for Titan Souls, which is actually the predecessor to this game, and was published by Devolver Digital. This game originally came out July 20th of 2021 for Windows, Xbox One, and Xbox X and Series S, and then later in November of that year also got a PS4 and PS5 and Switch release, and in November of that same year as well, Special Reserve Games did the original physical version of this game for the PS5 and Switch only, well, to the chagrin of Special Reserve collectors like myself, but to the delight of anybody who missed out on it, the PS5 and Switch versions will be getting a re-release in retail format sometime this fall. And when I mean sometime this fall, I'm seeing a few different dates from some different retailers, but overall, based on some of the overlap, I am pointing more towards a November 11th, 2022 release. There will be a standard version for $29.99 US, and then a Ultimate Edition for both platforms for $49.99 US, which will include a box, the game or the cart and the manual, a digital voucher for the soundtrack, and an art book. So again, if you missed out on the Special Reserve release, you probably, unless you want a numbered copy, you want to spend over $100 US for something sealed, you can just go to retail and get it for a normal value and be satisfied with that, although it won't be numbered. Okay, so now let's get into the game a bit and why I'm so amped about this to review this, and I highly recommend this, especially if you are a fan of Zelda or Dark Souls, which are basically the direct inspirations for this game. Death's Door is essentially a 3D isometric over-the-head action-adventure game where, let's talk about the plot a little bit first before we get into the gameplay. So, you are a crow who is a reaper in the afterlife, working for the Reaping Headquarters Commission, which is run by the Lord of Doors, and essentially you are tasked with going into the mortal realm and collecting souls, which helps you keep the energy of the headquarters running and all the operations in order. So during a routine mission where you're going after a giant soul, you end up defeating the monster on this barren, desolate world. Like, the world's been overrun by monsters for some reason. You beat this monster, collect a soul, but then this older gray crow shows up out of nowhere, knocks you on the head, steals your soul, and you wake up in this lost cemetery. You find the crow and then find out that the crow stole your soul in order to try to power this mysterious door so that they could open it and hopefully find out the truth as to what's been happening to some of the other crows from the commission who have disappeared. Now, the problem is that now that you, the crow, have lost your soul, you've also lost your seat at the office. So now you're not allowed to come back to work until you find this soul. So the crow commissions you with finding 3 other giant souls in these biomes that are connected to this mortal realm. He basically tells you, okay, you got to find these souls, bring them back to me, and then I'll try to open the door, get you your soul back, and then hopefully find out the truth about what's been happening to the commission. So now you're basically tasked with going out into the mortal realm, finding these 3 giant souls to find them back in these 3 distinct biomes. Now, the key is that when you're in the office commission afterlife, you are immortal. But when you go through one of the doors into the mortal realm, of course, you become mortal, you start to age like anybody else, and you can also die. So that's where the whole conflict comes in. But then these doors that connect you to the outer world hub, which is the afterlife, they serve a few purposes. Number one, they serve as checkpoints inside these biomes, but also as life replenishers. So when you go in and out of the doors, you'll refill your health. But the only thing is that any progress you've made in terms of killing enemies in that biome will get reset when you go in and out of the doors. So you want to make sure that you're kind of going in and out of it strategically, because you'll have to do everything over again. So then I'm going to be very upfront and transparent from the beginning. As I said before, the developer said that this game is inspired directly by Legend of Zelda in terms of its combat and puzzle solving, but also from Dark Souls in terms of its challenge. Now, I'm not very good at Dark Souls or Demon Souls or Bloodborne or any Soulsborne games. So I don't have a ton of experience with them. I do own a good deal of them and I respect them and I've played a little bit, but I'm not an expert on the overall mechanics and the lore and what it takes to make a good Soulsborne game. I have an idea of it and I can kind of see those aspects in Death's Door being played out in terms of the challenge, the dodging and attack gameplay. So I will say that up front that if I'm talking about certain tropes and it seems like I'm kind of reinventing the wheel, it's only because I'm not totally familiar with Soulsborne games, but you can kind of see where I'm going here. So anyway, going back to the game, you will basically go through these biomes trying to crush these souls, and you're going to be encountering all these different monsters, using basic attacks, dodge rolls, and magic attacks. So that's the essential crux of the gameplay in an effort to get these souls back. Now, let's talk a bit more about the developers before we get back into the gameplay and the story. So the developers, as I said, were Acid Nerve. It's like these two gentlemen out of Manchester, UK, by the name of Mark Foster and David Fenn. David Fenn, of course, did the wonderful, incredible, sublime piano and orchestral based soundtrack to this game. They're a two-man outfit, and they were at a little bit of assistance on this game as well. They were better known for 2015's Titan Souls, which was their debut and also the predecessor to this game. Now, Titan Souls and Death's Door do share some similarities, but they're also markedly different, and we'll get into some of that. So, Titan Souls, if you've never played it, is a very simple, pixel-based open world, Dark Souls-ish kind of game that started out as like a game jam concept and got fleshed out into a bigger game where essentially you are just a nameless hero armed with one arrow and a dash dodge roll mechanic, and you'll be tasked with killing 19 different titans in order to attain the power of gods and uncover the truth. And it's very simple gameplay. You have one hit. The bosses have one hit and a major weakness, and you have to use your arrow to find it. But the key is that you only have one arrow, and when you shoot it, you actually have to claim it back. And when you do go to shoot a boss, you can only stand still, and you have to charge the arrow, which leaves you very vulnerable. So you can see where it gets very interesting in terms of the boss battle mechanics and trying to find that weak point before you get crushed in one hit. I found it very enjoyable. I played through a good deal of it in preparation for this. But Death's Door, the developers Acid Nerve wanted to take the concepts of Titan Souls and expand them even further. So yes, Death's Door shares some concepts in terms of the boss battles with Titan Souls, but takes it even further in terms of developing a fully fleshed out story with cutscenes and characters and lore. Like, they're really building a world here. But also the combat. So, for example, you will start out with just a Reaper sword and bow and arrow magic, but then over the course of the game, and it is plotted and progresses very well, you will unlock different weapons, you'll unlock different more magic spells each time you beat a boss, and also when you fight bosses and enemies, they will take multiple hits, but it will require the same quick precision-based jab, get out of the way, do a dodge roll, get a couple hits kind of gameplay that, for example, Dark Souls is kind of famous for, right? So there's definitely a strategy to this. There's like a boxing vibe to the mechanics where, yeah, get in, get a couple hits, back off before you get hit, because this game will crush you if you're not quick on your feet. This game demands dexterity, precision, speed, and just a little bit of faith in the fact that you may be getting killed over and over and over, but at some point you'll figure out the patterns and get through it. And that's really all this is about. The bosses have patterns. You just need to keep getting killed until you figure it out. And I'm even going to say the bosses really aren't the star of the show here. I'm going to say that this game overall, including the post-game content, took me a bit over 20 hours to finish, where I'd say your expert player can probably finish the main story in about 8.5 hours and then 100% in about 15. But even then, with me and my relative inexperience with Souls-like games, I found the bosses to be not that difficult. They were fairly manageable. Really, the major challenge in this game came from the hordes that you fight when you're inching your way from checkpoint to checkpoint through these biomes. These battles can get pretty intense, and there's a lot of strategy in terms of how you make your quality of life work, because yes, you are going to open up checkpoints, and there are also flower pots that you find scattered throughout the land where you can plant these seeds, and when you plant them, you can eat them and replenish your life, but there's only a limited amount, and they're scattered, so you have to make sure that you're planting them in a strategic way so you don't run out of seeds at the wrong time. So there's a lot of elements to juggle, and the game itself has some nice light RPG elements. Now, it's not a full-on RPG, but you can level up your speed, your strength, your dexterity, your magic power, and then unlock weapons in a very Zelda-like fashion, in the sense that there's a lot of cool backtracking, like in a good Zelda game, where you may find an area that you can't access, but then eventually when you beat a boss later in the game, you'll get that weapon that will allow you to go back to that previously inaccessible area and then open up and find new things to do, right? So you'll have that, but then also the very Zelda-like puzzle solving. So for example, lighting torches and using weather effects to solve puzzles, that comes all into it. And especially the way in terms of you fight the bosses is also very Zelda-like from an action adventure standpoint. So there's a lot to sink your teeth into, especially if you're wanting a good challenge. But I would say, and it's kind of funny because I saw somebody in a comment online say that this is like baby's first Souls-like. Yes, this game is challenging, but even your average gamer will be able to get through this without a ton of frustration. So it definitely is very fair, but it is also a little obtuse and does not hold your hand, which is very typical for Acid Nerves games. In this game, there is no map. So you're going to have to memorize where to go. There's no checklist. There's no quest log. All there is an inventory screen showing your weapons, the collectibles that you've collected, and it's just you and your brain and your will to figure it out, to go through it. But the world is designed so well that you are going to find your way around pretty well without a lot of challenge. Okay. So that's gameplay in a nutshell. The graphics are splendid. So, of course, in Titan Souls, you had a very pixelated old school style, where in this one, they're opting for full 3D polygons with great character design, which was based off of Studio Ghibli. That was also another big influence on the game in this regard. But then you have this very nice muted color palette, which is moody, which is a little bit almost surreal, but melancholy, and suggests that there's just something not quite right with the world, that it has decayed to some kind of level and that you need to bring it back to its original form. So then, as I mentioned, the game can be beaten in about 8.5 hours if you're really good. You'll unlock a pretty cool ending, and then you'll watch the credits roll, but that's not where it ends, because after the credits roll, you can also unlock night mode, which starts the post game, where then you have to find 7 tablets of wisdom to unlock the true ending. And this is where it gets very interesting, because the true ending is not just a little bit more exposition. It is truly worth seeing, not only in terms of how it wraps up the story in a wonderful way and just really makes you feel something, but also how the ending goes to a meta level and speaks not only to the game, but outside of the game in terms of Acid Nerve as a developer as a whole, and giving you a bit more insight into what they're trying to do with their world building. I can't say much more than that for fear of spoiling this wonderful ending, but you've got to see it. And if you haven't played Death's Door and this is your first time going through it, I'm going to give you some tips right now off the bat to shave some hours off that playtime, because if I had known this, I would have finished this a lot sooner. So the first major tip I'm going to give you in regards to those flower pots I was talking about, there are 50 of them in total, 50 seeds and 50 flower pots. Whenever you plant one of those suckers, keep track of it. Keep track of how many you found in the biome, where it was, because this is going to save you a lot of grief later on. Because like I said, there are no maps, there's no checklist, so you've got to remember. And it kind of brought me back to, like, for example, GTA 4, when I was trying to hunt for all those pigeons and I had no way of knowing where they were, and I had to do a lot of retreading, which got frustrating. So I can't fault Acid Nerve for that design choice, because they don't like to hold your hands. I just need to warn you up front that that's the way it is. Also, I'm going to recommend that before you start the post-game content, you want to go and collect as many of the collectibles or shiny things as possible, because some of these will either help you unlock events in the post-game or give you clues as to what to do next. So I definitely recommend that. And then finally, if I can offer a tip in terms of making life a little bit easier in this game, there is a boss somewhere in this where it's going to seem like no matter how well you fight the boss, that time is always running out. I will give you a suggestion that the boss, like Titan Souls, has a couple of major weakness points that if you exploit them can extend the time of the battle, and I'm going to leave it at that. So I've said a lot here. Death's Door got a lot of well-deserved accolades and awards for the year it came out. It was the talk of the town. I was so excited to get to playing it, and I am completely satisfied with both my playthrough and my purchase, and I'm excited to see the fact that anybody who missed out on the original Special Reserve release will get another stab at it come this fall. Again, the tentative release date, according to Best Buy and a few other sites, is November 11th, 2022. You'll be able to get this from major retailers. There's a standard edition for PS5 and Switch for $29.99 US, and a collector's edition including some other goodies for $49.99. You should definitely not pass this up if you're into a good challenge. If you love the old Zelda games mixed with a bit of Dark Souls flair, this is definitely something I can recommend. You've been watching episode 25 of The Collecting Confidant with your host, GunstarHero. Make sure you like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one. Later, Game Chasers, and peace.